Section 9 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 9. The Gate of the City of Dis. The Sixth Circle. Heresy.
The colour cowardice brought out on me, who saw my leader coming back, the sooner repressed in him his unaccustomed hue. He stopped attentive like a man who listens, because his eyesight could not lead him far through the dark air and through the heavy fog.
"Yet we must win the battle,"
he began.
"unless one such did offer us herself. Oh, how I long for some one to arrive!"
I well perceived how, when he overlaid what he began to say by what came after, that these were words that differed from the first. But none the less his language gave me fear, because I lent to his unfinished phrase a meaning worse, perhaps, than he intended. Into this bottom of the dismal shell doth any of that first grade e'er descend, whose only penalty is hope cut off? I asked this question. He replied to me,
"It seldom comes to pass that one of us performs the journey whereupon I go. 'Tis true that I was conjured once before down here by magic of that wild Erichto, who used to call shades back into their bodies. My flesh had hardly been made bare of me, when me she forced to enter yonder wall, and thence withdraw a soul from Judas' ring. That is the lowest and the darkest place, and from the heaven that turns all things most distant. Well do I know the road, so be at rest. This marsh, from which the mighty stench exhales, girdles the woeful city round about, which without wrath we cannot enter now."
and more he said, but I recall it not, because mine eye had made me wholly heed the glowing summit of the lofty tower, where three infernal furies stained with blood had suddenly uprisen all at once, having the members and the mien of women, and girt with water snakes of brightest green. For hair they had small serpents and horned snakes, wherewith their frightful temples were entwined. And he who well the handmaids of the Queen of everlasting lamentation knew, said unto me,
"Behold the fierce Erineus. This is Megaera here upon the left, Alecto she who weepeth on the right, Tisiphone between."
Thereat he ceased. Each with her nails was tearing at her breast. They smote them with their hands, and cried so loud that to the poet I drew close in dread.
"Now let Medusa come.
We'll turn him thus to stone."
They all cried out as down they looked.
Wrong were not to punish Theseus' raid.
"Turn back and close thine eyes, for should the Gorgon reveal itself, and thou behold the face, there'd be no more returning up above."
The teacher thus, and turning me himself, on my hands he did not so far rely, as not to close mine eyes with his as well. O ye in whom intelligence is sound, heed carefully the teaching which lies hidden beneath the veil of my mysterious lines. There now was coming o'er the turbid waves the uproar of a dread inspiring sound, because of which both shores were all a-quake, a noise like nothing other than a wind, impetuous through opposing heats, which smites a forest, and without the least restraint shatters, lays low, and carries off its boughs. Dust-laden it goes proudly on its way, and makes wild animals and shepherds flee. He freed mine eyes, and said,
"Direct thou now thy keenest vision o'er that ancient scum to where that reeking smoke is most intense."
As frogs before the hostile water-snake scatter in all directions through the water, till each is squatting huddled on the shore. More than 1,000 ruined souls I saw, who thus from one were fleeing, who on foot, but with dry feet, was passing over Styx. That dense air he kept moving from his face, by often passing his left hand before him, and only with that trouble weary seemed. I well perceived he was a messenger from heaven, and to my teacher turned, with signs he warned me to keep still and bow before him. Ah, how disdainful did he seem to me! He reached the gate, and with a little wand he opened it, for hindrance had he none.
O people thrust from heaven and held in scorn!
Upon the horrid threshold he began.
Whence dwells in you this overweening pride? Why is it ye kick against the will from which its end can never be cut off, and which hath more than once increased your pain? Of what avail to butt against the fates? Your Cerberus, if ye remember well, still sports for this a hairless chin and neck.
He then returned along the filthy road, nor did he say a word to us, but looked like one whom other cares constrain and gnaw, than that of him who in his presence is. Then we with full assurance toward the town after those holy words addressed our steps. We entered it without the least contention, and I, who longed to look about and see the state of those whom such a fortress holds, when I was in it, cast mine eyes around, and see on every side an ample plain, with anguish and with awful torture filled. Even as at Arles, where Marshy turns the Rhone, or as at Pola near Quarnaro's Gulf, which bounds Italia and her border bathes. The sepulchres make all the ground uneven. So likewise did they here on every side, save that their nature was more bitter here. For flames were spread about within the tombs, whereby they glowed with such intensity that no art needeth greater heat for iron. The lids of all of them were raised, and wails so woeful issued thence that of a truth they seemed the wails of wretched, tortured men. Teacher, what sort of people are those there, said I, who buried in those ark-like tombs make themselves heard by means of woeful sighs?
Arch heretics are with their followers here,
said he.
of every sect, and far more laden than thou believest are the sepulchres. Here like with like is buried, and more hot and less so are the monuments.
Thereat, when he had turned him to the right, we passed between the woes and lofty bastioned walls.
End of Inferno, Canto 9. Section 10 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 10. The Sixth Circle. Heresy. Heretics.
Now wends his way along a narrow path between the torments and the city's wall, my teacher, and behind his shoulders I. O lofty virtue, I began, that leadst me around the impious circles at thy pleasure, converse with me and satisfy my wishes. The people that are lying in the tombs, could they be seen? For all the lids are raised, it seems, and there is no one keeping guard. And he to me,
They all will be locked in, when from Jehoshaphat they here return, together with the bodies they have left above. On this side have their burial place with Epicurus all his followers, who claim that with the body dies the soul. To the request, however, which thou makest, thou'lt soon receive a due reply in here, as also to the wish thou keepest from me.
and I, good leader, I but keep my heart concealed from thee, in order to speak little, nor hast thou only now thereto disposed me.
O Tuscan, thou that through the town of fire dost go alive with such respectful speech, in this place be thou pleased to stay thy steps. Thy very language makes thee manifest a native of that noble fatherland, to which I was, perhaps, too great a bane.
All of a sudden issued forth these words from one of those ark-tombs. Hence I in fear a little closer to my leader drew, and he said,
Turn around. What dost thou? See Farinata, who has risen there. Thou'lt see him wholly from his girdle up.
Already I had fixed mine eyes on his, and he was standing up with chest and head erect, as if he had great scorn for hell. My leader then with bold and ready hands pushed me between the sepulchres toward him, saying,
Now let thy words be frank and clear.
When I was 'neath his tomb, he looked at me a while, and then, as though disdainfully, he asked of me,
Who were thine ancestors?
and I, who was desirous to obey, hid it not from him, but revealed it all. Whereat he slightly raised his brows, and said,
So bitterly were they opposed to me, and to mine ancestors, and to my party, that I on 2 occasions scattered them.
If they were driven out, I answered him, from all directions they returned both times. Your people, though, have not well learned that art. A shade then at the tomb's uncovered mouth rose at his side as far up as his chin. I think that he had risen upon his knees. Round me he looked, as if he wished to see whether some other one were with me there. But when his doubt had wholly spent itself, weeping, he said,
If thou, through this blind prison, dost go by reason of high-mindedness, where is my son, and why is he not with thee?
And I to him, I come not by myself. He who is waiting yonder leads me here, one whom perhaps your Guido held in scorn. The nature of his torment and his words had read this person's name to me already. On this account was my reply so full. Then of a sudden standing up, he cried,
What saidst thou? Held? Is he not still alive? Doth not the sweet light strike upon his eyes?
When he perceived the short delay I made before replying, down upon his back he fell, nor outside showed himself again. The other one meanwhile, the great-souled man, at whose request I stopped, changed not his looks, nor did he move his neck or turn his side. And,
If,
continuing his previous words, he said,
If they have badly learned that art, far more doth that torment me than this bed. And yet that lady's face who ruleth here shall not be lighted 50 times again, ere thou shalt know how heavy that art is. And so mayst thou return to the sweet world. Pray tell me, why so pitiless toward mine? That people is in every law of theirs.
Whence I to him, The havoc and great slaughter which caused the Arbia to be coloured red occasion such petitions in our church. When, sighing, he had tossed his head, he said,
In this thing I was not alone, nor surely had I, without due cause, moved with the rest. But I was yonder, where assent was given by every one to do away with Florence, the only one to openly defend her.
So may your seed eventually repose, I begged of him. Untie for me, I pray, the knot which has perplexed my thinking here. It seems, if well I hear, that ye behold beforehand that which time brings with itself, while in the present ye do otherwise.
We see,
He said,
like one whose sight is poor, things that are far from us. To that extent, the highest leader shines upon us still. When they approach or are, our intellect is wholly vain, and we, if others bring no news, know nothing of your human state. Hence thou canst understand that wholly dead will be our knowledge from that moment on, when closed shall be the gateway of the future.
Thereat, for I was grieved at my mistake, I said, You'll therefore tell that fallen man his son is dwelling with the living still. And if in answering I was mute just now, cause him to know it was because my thoughts were struggling with the problem you have solved. And now my teacher was recalling me. With greater haste I therefore begged the spirit that he would tell me who was with him there. He said,
With over 1,000 here I lie. The second Frederick and the Cardinal are here within. I speak not of the rest.
He thereupon concealed himself. And I, those words recalling which seemed hostile to me, back toward the ancient poet turned my steps. The latter moved, and then, as on we went, he said to me,
Why art thou so perplexed?
And him in what he asked I satisfied.
Then let thy mind preserve
That sage enjoined,
what thou hast heard against thyself. Pay now attention here.
his finger then he raised.
When in the sweet ray's presence thou shalt be of her whose lovely eyes see everything, from her thou'lt know the journey of thy life.
Thereafter to the left he turned his feet. We left the wall, and toward the middle went along a path which to a valley leads, which even up there, unpleasant, made its stench.
End of Inferno Canto 10. Section 11 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno Canto 11. The Sixth Circle. Heresy. The distribution of the damned in the Inferno.
Upon the utmost verge of a high bank, formed in a circle by great broken rocks, we came upon a still more cruel pack. And there, by reason of the horrible excess of stench the deep abyss exhales, for shelter we withdrew behind the lid of a large tomb, whereon I saw a scroll which said, Pope Anastasius I contain, whom out of the right way Photinus drew.
Our going down from here must be delayed, so that our sense may first get used a little to this foul blast. We shall not mind it then.
The teacher thus, and I, find thou therefore some compensation, lest our time be lost. And he to me,
See how I think of this. My son, within these rocks
he then began.
are 3 small circles which, from grade to grade, are similar to those thou leavest now. Full of accursed spirits are they all. But that hereafter sight alone suffice thee, hear how and wherefore they are packed together. Of all wrong-doing which in heaven wins hate, injustice is the end, and each such end aggrieves by either violence or fraud. But whereas fraud is man's peculiar evil, God hates it most. Therefore the fraudulent are down below, and greater pain assails them. All the first circle holds the violent, but since against 3 persons force is used, its shape divides it into 3 great rings. Both against God, one's neighbour, and oneself may force be used. Against themselves, I mean, and what is theirs, as clearly shown thou'lt hear. By force both death and painful wounds are given one's neighbour, and thereby his property is ruined, burned, and by extortions robbed. The first ring, hence, torments in separate troops all homicides, and those that smite with malice, spoilers of property, and highway robbers. Upon oneself may one lay violent hands, and on one's goods. Hence in the second ring must needs repentant be without avail whoever of your world deprives himself, gambles away, and dissipates his means, and weepeth there where he should joyful be. 'Gainst God may force be used by wittingly denying that he is, by blasphemy, and by desprising nature and his goodness. And therefore with its mark the lesser ring sealeth both Sodom and Cahor, and him who, speaking from his heart, despises God. And fraud, whereby all consciences are bitten, one may employ against a man who trusts him, and against a man who storeth up no trust. This latter kind of fraud would seem to kill only the bond of love which nature makes. Hence in the second circle make their nest hypocrisy and flatteries, and workers of magic, coining, theft, and simony, panders and grafters, and such filth as these. In the other way forgotten is the love which nature makes, and that which afterward is joined thereto, whence special trust is born. Hence in the smallest ring, where the universe its centre hath, and on which this is seated, whoever betrays is spent eternally.
Teacher, said I, thine argument proceeds most lucidly, and full well classifies this deep abyss and those that people it. But tell me now, those of the muddy marsh, those whom the wind drives, those the rain beats down, and those that with such keen tongues meet each other, why aren't they punished in the red-hot town, if God be angry with them? And if not, why are they tortured in those several ways? And he to me,
Why doth thine intellect wander so far from that which is its wont, or doth thy mind intently gaze elsewhere? Hast thou no recollection of the words with which thine Ethics treats extensively, the dispositions 3 which heaven rejects, incontinence and malice, and insane bestiality, and how incontinence offends God least, and hence receives least blame? If thou consider this opinion well, and then remember who those are above that outside undergo their punishment, well shalt thou see why from these wretches here they're set apart, and why less wrathfully vengeance divine is hammering on them here.
O Sun that healest every troubled sight, thou so contentest me when answering questions, that doubt no less than knowledge pleases me. Return a little further back, said I, to where thou sayest usury offends goodness divine, and loose the tangled knot.
Philosophy,
said he to me,
points out to him that understandeth it, and not in one part only, that nature takes her course from the intellect divine and from its art, and if thou note thy physics carefully, after not many pages shalt thou find that your art follows that as best it can, as the disciple him who teaches. Hence your art is grandchild, as it were, to God. From these two things, if thou recall to mind the first of Genesis, must people needs obtain their livelihood, and progress make. And as the usurer takes another course, nature both in herself and in her follower he scorneth, since in something else he trusts. But follow me now, for I please to go, because the fishes o'er the horizon quiver, and wholly over chorus lies the wain, and one descends the bank much further on.
End of Inferno Canto 11. Section 12 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno Canto 12. The Seventh Circle, the First Ring. Violence against one's fellow man. Murderers and spoilers. Phlegethon.
The place, where to descend the bank we came, was Alp-like, and through what was also there, such that all eyes would be repelled by it. As is that downfall on the hither side of Trent, which sidewise smote the Adige, through earthquake or through failure of support. Since from the mountain's summit, whence it moved down to the plain, the rock is shattered so, that it would yield a path for one above. Even such was the descent of that ravine, and on the border of the broken bank was stretched at length the infamy of Crete, who in the seeming heifer was conceived. And when he saw us there, he bit himself, like one whom inward anger overcomes. In his direction then my sage cried out,
Dost thou perhaps think Athens' Duke is here, who gave thee death when in the world above? Begone, thou beast, for this man cometh not taught by thy sister, but is going by in order to behold your punishments.
as doth a bull who from his leash breaks free the moment he receives the mortal blow, and cannot walk, but plunges here and there. So doing I beheld the Minotaur, and he aware cried out,
Run to the pass, 'tis well that, while he rages, thou descend.
Thereat we made our way adown that heap of fallen rocks, which often 'neath my feet were moved, because of their unwonted load. I went along in thought, and he,
Perchance thou thinkest of this landslide, which is guarded by that beast's anger which I quenched just now. Now I would have thee know that, when down here to nether hell I came, that other time, this mass of rock had not yet fallen down. But certainly, if I remember well, not long ere he arrived who carried off from this the highest circle's mighty prey, on every side the deep and foul abyss so trembled that I thought the universe had felt the love whereby, as some believe, the world to chaos hath been oft reduced. And at that moment this old mass of rock was thus both here and elsewhere overthrown. But turn thine eyes down yonder now, for lo, the stream of blood is drawing near to us, wherein boils who by violence harms others.
O blind cupidity, O foolish wrath, that so dost in our short life goad us on, and after in the eternal steep us thus. I saw a wide moat curving in an arc, and such that it embraces all the plain, according as my escort had informed me. And in a file between it and the bank, centaurs were running by, with arrows armed, as in the world it was their wont to hunt. On seeing us descend they all stopped short, and 3 of them detached them from the troop, with bows and arrows they had chosen first. And one cried from afar,
Ye that descends the slope, to what pain are ye coming? Tell it from there, or else I draw my bow.
My teacher said,
Our answer we will give to Chiron yonder, when we reach his side. Thus ever to thy harm was thy will rash.
He touched me then, and said,
That one is Nessus, who died for lovely Deianira's sake, and who himself wrought vengeance for himself. The middle one, who gazes at his breast, is that great Chiron, who brought up Achilles. The other Pholus, who so wrathful was. They go by thousands round about the moat, shooting each soul that from the blood emerges further than its own sin allotted it.
To those swift-footed beasts we then drew near. Chiron an arrow took, and with its notch backward upon his jaws he pushed his beard. When he had thus uncovered his great mouth, he said unto his mates,
Are ye aware that he who comes behind moves what he touches? Yet dead men's feet are not thus wont to do.
And my good leader, who now reached his breast, where the two natures are together joined, replied,
He lives, indeed, and thus alone must I needs show to him the dark abyss. Necessity is leading him, not pleasure. One who withdrew from singing praise to God gave me this new commission. He is not a highwayman, nor I a robber's soul. But by the power, through whom I move my steps along so wild a road, bestow on us one of thy troop, at whose side we may be, and who may show us where one fords, and carry this man upon his back, for he is not a spirit who can travel through the air.
Upon his right breast Chiron turned, and said to Nessus,
Turn around and guide them thus, and if another troop should meet you, cause it to stand aside.
Then we with this safe escort skirted the edge of that red boiling stream, wherein the boiled were crying out aloud. I saw some people in it to their brows.
These tyrants are,
The mighty centaur said,
who took to bloodshed and to plundering. Here tears are shed, because of heartless wrongs. Here Alexander is, and who for years grieved Sicily, fierce Dionysus. The brow which hath so black a head of hair is Azzolino, the other which is blonde, Obisso of Este, who in truth was quenched up in the world by his unnatural son.
I turned then toward the poet, but he said,
Be he now first to thee, and second I.
A little further on the centaur stopped over some people who, it seemed, emerged out of that boiling river from their necks. On one side there a lonely shade he showed us, and said,
He yonder in God's bosom pierced the heart which still is honoured on the Thames.
Then people I beheld who from the stream held out their heads, and even all their chest, and many did I recognize of these. Thus shallower and shallower became that blood, until it only cooked their feet. Here was the place for us to ford the ditch.
Even as thou seest that the boiling stream grows shallow more and more on this side here.
The centaur said,
I wish thee to believe that on this other side its bottom sinks, increasingly, until it joins the place where it behoveth tyranny to groan. Justice divine is over here tormenting that Attila was a scourge on earth. Pyrrhus and Sextus and forever milks the tears which with the boiling it unlocks from Rinier da Corneto and Rinier Pazzo, who on the high roads waged so great a war.
He then turned back and crossed the ford again.
End of Inferno, Canto 12. Section 13 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 13. The Seventh Circle, the Second Ring. Violence against oneself. Suicides and squanderers.
Not yet had Nessus reached the other side, when we had set our steps within a wood, which was not marked by any path whatever. No green leaves there, but leaves of gloomy hue. No smooth and straight, but gnarled and twisted twigs. Nor was there any fruit, but poison thorns. No thickets rough and dense as these are owned by those wild beasts that hate the tilled estates that lie between the Cecina and Corneto. Herein those ugly harpies make their nest, who drove the Trojans from the Strophades with gloomy prophecies of future loss. Wide wings they have, and human necks and faces. Their feet are clawed, and feathered their great bellies. They utter wailings on the uncouth trees. My kindly teacher then began to say,
Before thou enter any further, know that in the second ring thou art, and wilt be until thou reach the horrid plain of sand. Hence look around thee well, and things thou'lt see that from my words would take away belief.
Moans I heard uttered upon every side, but saw no person who might make them there. Hence, utterly confused, I checked my steps. I think he thought I thought that all those voices were uttered from among those thorny trunks by people hiding there on our account. The teacher therefore said,
If thou break off a little twig from any of these trees, the thoughts thou hast will all be proven false.
I then stretched out my hand a little way, and from a sturdy thorn tree plucked a twig, whereat its trunk cried out,
Why dost thou rend me?
Then, after growing dark with blood, its cry began again.
Why dost thou break me off? Hast thou no spirit of compassion in thee? Men we were once, and now our stocks become. Thy hand ought surely to have more pity, even if the souls of serpents we had been.
As from a fresh green log that at one end is being burned, and at the other drips and makes a hissing with the escaping air, so from the broken twig together issued both words and blood. I therefore dropped the end and stood dumbfounded like a man who fears.
Had he before been able to believe, O wounded soul?
Replied my sage to him,
What in my verses only he has seen, he had not set his hand on thee, whereas the thing's incredibility has made me lead him to do what I myself regret. But tell him who thou wast, that he, by way of compensation, may refresh thy fame up in the world, where he can still return.
The trunk.
With sweet words thou dost entice me, that I cannot keep still. Be not annoyed if I am tempted to a little talk. I am the man who once held both the keys of Frederick's heart, and he who turned them round so gently, locking and unlocking it, that most men from his secrets I withheld. So faithful was I to my glorious charge, that for its sake I lost both sleep and strength. The courtesan who never turned away her harlot eyes from Caesar's dwelling place, a common form of death and vice of courts, gainst me inflamed the minds of everyone, and those on fire inflamed Augustus so that my glad honours turned to wretched grief. My mind, to vent its feelings of disdain and thinking to avoid disdain by death, made me unjust against myself, the just. By this tree's uncouth roots I swear to you, I never broke the faith I owed my lord, who so deserving was of reverence. And to the world should one of you return, let him assist my memory, which still lies crushed beneath the blow which envy gave it.
A while he waited, then the poet said,
Since he is still, lose not thy chance, but speak and ask him other questions if thou like.
Whence I to him, Ask thou again whate'er thou thinkest satisfactory to me, for I could not, such pity stirs my heart. Hence he began again.
So may this man do freely for thee what thy words request, imprisoned spirit. May it please thee still to tell us how within these knotted trunks a soul is bound, and tell us, if thou canst, if any from such limbs is ever freed.
Thereat the trunk blew hard, and afterward that wind was changed into the following words.
Briefly shall a reply be made to you. Whenever a wild spirit leaves the body, from which itself hath torn itself away, Minos commits it to the seventh ravine. Into the woods it falls, nor is a place allotted to it, but where fortune hurls it, there like a grain of sped it germinates. It grows into a sapling and wild tree, The harpies, feeding then upon its leaves, cause pain to it, and for the pain a vent. Like other spirits for our spoils will come, though not that any be reclothed therewith, for 'tis not right to have what one casts off. We'll drag them with us here, and then our bodies will all around the dismal wood be hung, each on the thorn tree of its hostile shade.
We still were giving heed unto the trunk, believing that it wished to tell us more, when we were startled by a sudden noise, as likewise he is who perceives a boar and pack of hounds approach his hunting post, and hears the crashing of the beasts and boughs. And lo, two on the left, who naked were and scratched, and fled away so rapidly they shattered all the branches of the wood. The one ahead,
"Now hurry, hurry, Death!"
and the other one, who thought himself too slow, cried,
Lano, not so knowing were thy legs, when running from Del Topo's battle jousts.
And then, perhaps because of failing breath, he there made of himself and of a bush a group. The wood behind these two was full of swarthy bitches, ravenous and fleet as greyhounds are when from their chains unleashed. Into the one who crouched they set their teeth, and tore him into pieces bit by bit. They then made off with those his suffering limbs. Thereat my escort took me by the hand, and led me to the bush, which all in vain out of its bleeding rents was shedding tears.
O Giacomo,
It said,
the son Andrea, what boots it thee to make a screen of me? And how am I to blame for thy bad life?
When over him my teacher stopped, he said,
Who then wast thou, that through so many gashes art blowing forth with blood such painful speech?
And he to us,
O spirits that have come in time to see the unbecoming havoc, which from me thus hath torn away my leaves, collect them at the foot of my sad bush. I to that town belonged which for the Baptist changed its first patron, wherefore he, for this, will always make her mournful with his art. And were it not that on the Arno's bridge there lingers still some little glimpse of him, those townsmen who rebuilt her afterward, over the ashes left by Attila, had caused that work to be performed in vain, I made myself a gibbet of my house.
End of Inferno, Canto 13. Section 14 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 14. The Seventh Circle, the Third Ring. Violence against God. Blasphemers.
Since love for my own native place constrained me, I gathered up the scattered twigs and leaves, and gave them back to him who now was weak. Thence to the bound we came, where from the third the second ring is severed, and wherein a frightful form of justice may be seen. To manifest aright what here was new, I say that we had reached a barren plain, which from its bed removeth every plant. The woeful wood is as a garland round it, as round the former is the dismal moat. There on its very edge we stayed our steps. Its soil was of a dense and arid sand, whose nature differed in no way from that which once was trodden by the feet of Cato. Vengeance of God, how much by every one thou oughtest to be feared, who readeth here what to these eyes of mine was manifest. Of naked souls I many flocks beheld, who all wept very sorely, while on each a different law appeared to be imposed. A few lay on the ground upon their backs, and some were seated cuddled up together, while others moved about continually. Most numerous were those that moved around, and least so those that under torment lay, but all the freer had their tongues to wail. Down on the whole great waste of sand there rained with gentle fall dilated flakes of fire, like flakes of snow that fall on windless Alps. As were the flames which Alexander saw in India's torrid regions, as they fell upon his hosts, unbroken to the ground. And this he met by ordering his troops to trample on the soil, because the flames when single were more easily put out. Even such descended here the eternal heat, whereby the sand was set on fire, as tinder is kindled under steel, to double pain. And ever without resting was the dance of wretched hands, that kept now here, now there, slapping away each latest burning flake. Thou, teacher, I began, that conquerest all, except the stubborn devils who came out against us at the entrance of the gate, who is that great one who seems not to mind the fire, but lies there scornful and awry, so that the rain seems not to ripen him? And that same one, who had observed that I concerning him was questioning my leader, cried,
As I was alive, such am I dead. Is Jove should tire that smith of his, from whom in wrath he took the pointed thunderbolt, wherein I smitten was that final day, or should he tire the others, each in turn, in Mungio bellow smithy black with smoke, by calling out, Help, help, good Vulcan, help, even as he did on Phlega's battlefield, and should he shoot at me with all his might, no glad revenge would he obtain thereby.
Thereat my leader spoke with so much force that I had never heard him use the like.
In that thine arrogance, O Capaneus, is not extinguished, art thou all the more chastised. No torment, saving thine own rage, were for thy furious pride a fitting pain.
Then with a gentler mien he turned to me, and said,
One of the 7 kings was he who Thebes besieged. He held, and seems to hold, God in disdain, and little seems to prize him. But, as I told him, his own spitefulness is fit enough adornment for his breast. Now follow me, and see that thou meanwhile set not thy feet upon the burning sand, but to the thicket keep them ever close.
In silence we went on, and came to where out of the wood a little stream spurts forth, whose ruddy colour makes me shudder still. As from the Bulicame springs a brook, which afterward the sinful women share, even so went that one down across the sand. Its bottom and both sides had turned to stone, as also had the embankments on each side. I hence perceived the crossing place was there.
Of all the other things which I have shown thee, since first we entered through the outer gate, whose threshold unto no one is denied, nothing has ever by thine eyes been seen as notable as is this present brook, which deadens over itself all little flames.
These were my leader's words. I therefore begged that he would freely grant to me the food, desire of which he had so freely given.
Amid the sea there lies a wasted land,
he told me thereupon,
whose name is Crete, under whose king the world of old was pure. There is a mountain there, which, happy once with waters and green leaves, was Ida called. 'Tis now abandoned like a thing outworn. Whilom, as trusty cradle for her son Rhea selected it, and when he wept, to hide him better, caused a shouting there. Within that mountain stands a great old man, who holds his shoulders toward Damiata turned, and who, as at his mirror, looks at Rome. His head is formed of finest gold, his arms and breast are of the purest silver, then, as far as to his loins, he is made of brass. All chosen iron is he down from there, save that baked clay his right foot is, and straighter he stands on that than on the other foot. Each of these parts, except the golden one, is broken by a cleft, whence trickle tears, which, when collected, perforate that cave. From rock to rock they course into this vale. Then Acheron with Styx and Phlegethon they form, and through this narrow duct descend as far as where one goes no further down. They form Cocytus there, and what that pool is like thou'lt see, hence here it is not told.
And I to him, if thus this present stream has from our world descended, why alone on this ring's edge hath it appeared to us? And he,
Thou knowest that the place is round, and though a long way thou hast gone already, ere to the left, descending toward the bottom, through the whole circle thou hast not yet gone. Wherefore, if aught that's new appear to us, it should not bring amazement to thy face.
And I again, But where are Phlegethon and Lethe, teacher? For of this one silent, thou sayest the other of this rain is made. And he replied,
Thou certainly dost please me in all thy questions, but the red streams boiling ought surely to have answered one of them. Lethe thou'lt see but there, outside this cave, whither souls go to wash themselves, when once their sin, repented of, has been removed.
And then he said,
It is now time for us to leave the wood. See that thou follow me. The banks which are not burned afford a path, and up above them every flame is quenched.
End of Inferno, Canto 14. Section 15 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 15. The Seventh Circle, Third Ring. Violence against Nature. Sodomites.
One of the hard embankments bears us now, and overhead the brook's mist shades them so, that from the fire it saves the stream and banks. Such bulwarks as to keep the sea away the Flemings make between Whitsand and Bruges, through fearing lest the high tide break upon them, and as the Paduans make along the Brenta, their villages and strongholds to defend, ere Chiarentana feel the summer heat. In such a way were those embankments made, although the Master did not make them there so high or thick, whoe'er he may have been. So far we were already from the wood, that I could not have seen just where it was, even had I turned around to look behind, when we a band of spirits met, who came along the bank, each one of whom looked hard at us, as in the evening one is wont to look at people when the moon is new. And toward us they were knitting close their brows, as an old tailor at his needle's eye. When by that gathering I had thus been eyed, one of them, who had recognized me, seizing my garment's hem, exclaimed,
How wonderful!
And I, when toward me he had stretched his arm, fastened upon his roasted face mine eyes, so that, though blistered, it did not prevent mine intellect from recognizing him. And downward having bent my face toward his, I answered him, Are you here, Ser Brunetto? And that one,
My son, be not displeased should Brunetto Latini a little way turn back with thee, and let the troop go on.
I beg you to, with all my power, said I. And if you'd have me sit with you, I will, if it please that one, for with him I go.
Son,
he said,
whoever of this herd stands still at all lies prone 100 years, nor shields himself when smitten by the fire. Therefore go on, I'll follow at thy skirts, and then I'll join again my company, which goes bewailing its eternal loss.
I dared not from the path descend to go upon his level there, but held my head bowed down like one who walks in reverence. And he began,
What fortune, or what fate, before thy last day, leadeth thee down here? And who is he that showeth thee the way?
I answered him, When in the life serene up yonder, in a vale I lost my way, before my age had rounded out its noon. Thereon I turned my back but yestermorn. This one, as I returned to it, appeared to me, and o'er this path now leads me home. And he to me,
If thine own star thou follow, thou canst not fail to reach a glorious port, if in the lovely life I judged aright. And had I not so prematurely died, I, seeing heaven so well disposed towards thee, had given thee comfort in thy work. But that ungrateful, wicked people, which of old came down from Fiesole, and which e'en now smacks of the mountain and of hard grey stone, for thy well-doing shall become thy foe. And rightly, for among the acid sobs it is not fitting that sweet figs bear fruit. An old fame in the world proclaims them blind, a greedy, envious, overweening folk. See to it that thou cleanse thee from their ways. Thy fortune hath in store for thee such honour, that either party shall be hungry for thee, but distant from the goat shall be the grass. Let then the beasts of Fiesole make litter with their own selves, nor let them touch the plant, if on their dung-heap any perchance still, in which the sacred seed may live again of those old Romans who remained therein when of such wickedness the nest was made.
If perfectly fulfilled had been my prayer, I then replied to him, you had not yet been banished from the natural life of man. For in my mind is fixed, and stirs e'en now my heart, that dear and kind paternal face you showed, when in the world from time to time you taught me how man makes himself eternal. And how much gratitude I feel for this must, while I live, be in my words perceived. What of my course you tell, I write and keep, with other texts, for a lady to explain, who can, if I ever attain to her. I only wish that this be clear to you, that I, if but my conscience chide me not, am ready for whatever fortune wills. Not new unto mine ears is such reward. Hence, as she lists, let fortune turn her wheel, and let the country clown his mattock ply. Thereat my teacher over his right cheek turned back and looked at me, and then he said,
He listens well who giveth heed to this.
Nor speaking less do I, on this account, go on with Ser Brunetto, asking who his fellows were of greatest note and rank, and he to me,
'Tis well to know of some. Our silence on the rest will merit praise, for short the time were for so long a talk. Know then, in brief, that clerics were they all, and mighty men of letters of great fame, soiled by the self-same sin when in the world. And with that sad crowd yonder Priscian goes, and Francis of Accorso too, and him, if thou hadst had a longing for such scurf, thou couldst have seen there, whom the servant changed from the Arno to the Bacchiglione, where he behind him left his ill-strained nerves. I'd speak of more, but I can come and talk no further. For a new dust cloud I see rising o'er yonder from the sandy plain. People with whom I must not be are coming. Let my tesoro, in which I'm still alive, be recommended thee. I ask no more.
Then round he turned, and seemed to be of those who at Verona run across the meadow to win the green cloth, and of these he seemed not he who loses, but the one who wins.
End of Inferno, Canto 15. Section 16 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 16. The Seventh Circle, the Third Ring. Violence against Nature. Sodomites.
I now was where the booming of the water which fell into the following round was heard like the dull buzzing sound which beehives make, when three shades separated from a group, which neath the rain's tormenting punishment was passing by, and ran along together. Toward us they came, and each of them cried out,
Stop thou!
that by thy guard dost seem to us a citizen of our corrupted town.
Alas, what wounds I saw upon their limbs, both old and recent, by the flames burnt in! It pains me still but to remember them. My leader, giving heed to these their cries, turned his face round toward me, and said,
Now wait. To those men yonder courtesy is due, and were not for the fire, which, arrow-like, the nature of the place shoots forth, I'd say that haste were more becoming thee than them.
And they, when we had stopped, began again their old refrain, and after they had reached us, all three of them made of themselves a wheel. As champions oiled and nude are wont to do, when looking for an advantageous grip, before they come to giving blows and wounds. Thus as he wheeled, each turned his face toward me, so that his feet continuous journey made in opposite direction to his neck. And one began,
Even if the wretched nature of this soft place, and our burned, shrivelled faces, bring us and our requests into contempt, still let our reputation bend thy mind to tell us who thou art, that dost so safely rub on the soil of hell thy living feet. He in whose footprints thou dost see me tread was, though he go both nude and hairless now, of higher rank than thou believest him. He was the grandson of the good Gualdrada. His name was Guido Guerra, and when alive, his wisdom and his sword accomplished much. The other, who behind me treads the sand, Tejero Aldobrandi is, whose voice should have been welcomed in the world above. And I, who with them am tormented here, Jacopo Rusticucci was, and surely my shrewish wife than aught else hurts me more.
If I had been protected from the fire, I would have leapt into their midst below, and I believe my leader had allowed it. But since I should have burned and baked myself, fear was victorious over my good will, which made me eager to embrace them there. I then began, Your state impressed within me not scorn, but so much pain, that only late will all of it entirely disappear, as soon as this my lord said words to me, because of which I thought within myself that there were people coming such as you. Of your own town am I, and evermore have I your doings and your honoured names related, and heard mentioned with regard. I leave the gall, and for the sweet fruit go, which my veracious leader promised me. But to the centre must I first descend.
So may thy spirit lead thy members long.
The former thereupon replied to me,
And, after thou art gone, thy fame be bright. Tell me if courtesy and worth abide within our town, as they were wont to do, or whether they have wholly gone from it. For Guillermo Borsieri, who but newly has been in pain with us, and with our mates goes yonder, grieves us greatly with his words.
The people newly come and sudden gains have bred in thee such pride and such excess, that, Florence, thou art even now in pain. Thus with uplifted face I cried, whereat the three, who this as answer understood, looked at each other, as one looks at truth.
If satisfying others other times cost thee so little, happy thou that thus at thy sweet will dost speak.
They all replied,
Hence, so mayst thou, from these dark places saved, return to see the lovely stars again, when saying, I was there, shall do thee good. See that thou tell the people about us.
They then broke up their wheel, and in their flight it seemed as if their nimble legs were wings. Amen could not have been as quickly said, as they then disappeared. My teacher therefore thought it advisable for us to leave. I followed him, and not far had we gone, before the water's noise was so near by, that had we spoken we had not been heard. And as the stream, which is the first that eastward from Monteveso takes a separate course upon the left slope of the Apennines, and which above is Aquacheta called, before it flows into its lowly bed, and at Forlì is of that name deprived, booms loud because of falling o'er a cliff above San Benedetto of the Alp, where for 1,000 there should refuge be. Even thus, as o'er a precipice it fell, we found that coloured water roaring so that very soon it would have hurt our ears. I had a cord around me girt, wherewith I once had thought that I could capture the leopard with the brightly coloured hide. When from me I had wholly loosened it, even as my leader had commanded me, I coiled it up and held it out to him. Thereat upon his right he turned around, and hurled it to some distance from the edge down into that profound and dark abyss. Surely some strange new thing must needs reply, said I within myself, to this strange signal, which with his eye my teacher follows thus. Ah, with what caution men should deal with those who see not only what is done by others, but with their wisdom see into their thoughts. He said to me,
What I am waiting for, and what thy thought now dreams, will soon come up. Soon to thy vision will it be revealed.
Ere to a truth that hath a falsehood's face ought one to close his lips as best he can, for though one faultless be, it brings him shame. But I cannot suppress it here. Hence, reader, even by the verses of this comedy, so may they not be void of lasting favour, I swear to thee that through that coarse dark air I saw a shape which would have chilled with wonder however brave a heart, come swimming up, as he returns who going down at times to clear an anchor clinging to a reef, or aught else lying hidden in the sea, above extends and draweth in below.
End of Inferno, Canto 16. Section 17 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 17. The Seventh Circle, the Third Ring. Violence against art. Usurers.
Behold the wild beast with the pointed tail, which, crossing mountains, breaks through walls and armour. Behold who sickens all the world with stench.
My leader thus began to speak to me, and signalled to it to approach the edge, near where the marble we had traversed ended, and that foul image of deceit came on, and landed on the bank its head and chest, but o'er the edge it drew not up its tail. Its face was as the face of a just man, so pleasing outwardly was its complexion. The body of a serpent all the rest. 2 paws it had, all hairy to the armpits. Its back and breast, as well as both its sides, were painted o'er with snares and wheel-like shields. Ne'er with more colours in its woof and warp did Turks or Tartars manufacture cloth, nor by Arachne were such webs designed. As flatboats sometimes lie upon the shore, in water partly, partly on the land, and as among the greedy Germans yonder the beaver seats himself to wage his war, so lay that worst of beasts upon the edge which closes in the sandy plain with stone. All of its tail was quivering in the void, and twisting upward its envenomed fork, which like a scorpion's weapon armed its tip.
Our path must turn aside a little now,
my leader said to me,
until we reach that wicked beast reclining over there.
Around our right breast therefore we went down, and took 10 paces on the very edge, thus surely to avoid both sand and fire. And after we had come to it, I saw, upon the sand a little further on, some people sitting near the precipice. My teacher then,
That thou mayst take with thee a full experience of this ring, go on, and see the nature of the life they lead. There be thy conversation brief. Meanwhile, till thou return, I'll talk with this wild beast, that its strong shoulders may be yielded us.
Thus further on, along the outer edge of that 7th circle, all alone I went, to where the melancholy people sat. Out of their eyes their woe was bursting forth. First here, then there, they helped them with their hands, now from the flame, now from the heated soil. Not otherwise do dogs in summer time, now with their paws, and with their muzzles now, whene'er by fleas or flies or gadflies bitten. When on the face of some I set mine eyes, on whom the woeful fire is falling there, I knew not one of them, but I perceived that from the neck of each there hung a pouch, which had a certain colour and design, wherewith their eyes appeared to feed themselves. And as I, looking, came into their midst, azure upon a yellow pouch I saw, which had the form and semblance of a lion. Then, as my gaze continued on its course, another I beheld, as red as blood, exhibiting a goose more white than butter. And one of them, who had his small white pouch emblazoned with an azure pregnant sow, said to me,
What dost thou in this our ditch? Now go thy way, and since thou livest still, know that my fellow townsman, Vitaliano, will sit beside me here upon my left. I, with these Florentines, a Paduan am, and very frequently they stun my ears by shouting, Let the sovereign knight arrive, who'll bring with him the pocket with 3 beaks.
Herewith his mouth he twisted, sticking out his tongue, as doth an ox that licks its nose. And I, afraid lest any longer stay might anger him who warned me to be brief, turned from those weary spirits back again. I found my leader, who had climbed already upon the back of that fierce animal, and said to me,
Now be thou strong and bold, by stairs like these shall we descend hereafter. Climb thou in front, for midst I wish to be, so that the tail may do no injury.
Like one with quartan fever's chill so near, that pale already are his finger-nails, and that but looking at the shade he shudders. Such at the words he uttered I became. But that shame made its threats to me, which renders a servant strong when in a good lord's presence. As on those horrid shoulders I sat down, I wished to tell him, See that thou embrace me. My voice, however, came not as I thought. But he who succoured me at other times and other straits, as soon as I was up, encircled and sustained me with his arms. And then he said,
Now, Geryon, move thou on. Wide be thy wheels, and gradual thy descent. Bethink thee of the unwonted load thou hast.
As from its mooring place a little boat backs slowly out, even so did he withdraw, and when he wholly felt himself in play, to where his breast had been, he turned his tail and moved the latter, stretched out like an eel, while with his paws he gathered in the air. I do not think that there was greater fear when Phaeton let go his horse's reins, whereby, as still appears, the sky was burned, nor yet when wretched Icarus perceived his back unfeathering through the melting wax, while, calling him, his father cried, Thou hold'st an evil course, than mine was, when I saw that I was in the air on every side, and gone the sight of all things save the beast. The latter, swimming, slowly wends his way, wheels and descends, but I perceive it not, save by the wind below and in my face. The waterfall I now heard on the right, making a horrid roar beneath us. Hence I outward thrust my head with eyes turned down. More fearful of the abyss I then became, for fires I now beheld and wailings heard. Hence trembling I clung closer with my thighs, and then, for I perceived it not before, by the great torments which on divers sides drew near, I saw our wheeling and descent. Even as a falcon long upon the wing, which, without seeing lure or game bird, makes the falconer say, Alas, thou comest down, descendeth weary, through 100 rings, whence he had swiftly started, and alights far from his lord in angry sullenness. So likewise Geryon set us down below, close to the bottom of the rough-hewn rock, and of our persons rid, as fast as flies an arrow from a bowstring, sped away.
End of Inferno, Canto 17. Section 18 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 18. The 8th Circle, Fraud. The 1st Trench, Panders and Seducers. The 2nd Trench, Flatterers and Prostitutes.
A place there is in hell called Malebolge, wholly of stone, and of an iron hue, as is the round wall which encircles it. Right in the midst of its malicious field yawneth a well exceeding wide and deep, of whose construction, in its place, I'll speak. Round therefore is the girdle which remains between the well and that hard high wall's base, and 10 great trenches subdivide its bed. As is the appearance which, where many moats encircle castles for the wall's protection, the section where they are presents, such was the one those trenches furnished here. And just as in such fortresses small bridges stretch from their thresholds to the outmost bank, so crags ran from the bottom of the cliff across the banks and trenches to the well, which gathering them together cuts them off. In this place then we found ourselves, when dropped from Geryon's back. The poet thereupon held to the left, and I behind him moved. Upon the right side I beheld new cause for sympathy, new pains, and scourges new, wherewith the first trench was completely filled. Down at its bottom naked were the sinners. This side the middle facing us they came, beyond it with us, but with quicker steps. Means such as those which at the Jubilee the Romans took, because of its great throng, to have the people pass across the bridge, who toward the castle all on one side face, and toward St. Peter's go their way, while all move toward the mountain on the other edge. This side and that, upon the dark stone floor, horned demons with great scourges I beheld, who from behind were fiercely whipping them. Ah, how they caused them to lift them up their heels, when by the first blows smitten, certainly none waited for the second or the third. While I was going on, mine eyes were met by one of them, and instantly I said, I fast not from a previous sight of him. To make him out I therefore stayed my feet, and having stopped with me, my gentle leader assented to my going back a little. That scourged one thought that he could hide himself by looking down, but little it availed him. For, thou that castest down thine eyes, said I, unless the features which thou hast are false, venedico caccianimico art. But what brings thee into such pungent sauces? And he to me,
Unwillingly I tell it, but forced I am by thy transparent speech, which makes me recollect the olden world. I was the one who led Gisola Bella to do according to the Marquis's will, however the disgusting tale be told. Nor am I here the only Bolognese that weeps. Nay, this place is so full of us that not so many tongues are taught to-day between Savena and Reno to say pipa. And if thereof thou wouldst have pledge or proof, recall to mind our avaricious breasts.
As thus he spoke, a demon with his lash smote him, and said to him,
Pander, be gone. There are no women here to sell for coin.
I then rejoined my escort, whereupon, when we had taken some few steps, we came to where a crag projected from the bank. This we ascended with the greatest ease, and turning to the right along its ridge, we left those everlasting circling walls. When we were where it hollows out below, to let the scourged pass through, my leader said,
Now stay thy steps, and on thee let the sight of all these other ill-born spirits strike, whose faces thou hast not perceived as yet, because they've gone with us in our direction.
As from the ancient bridge we watched the troop, which on the other side was toward us coming, and which the scourge was likewise driving on, without my asking, my good teacher said,
Look at that great man there, who, as he comes, for all his pain, seems not to shed a tear. How royal an appearance he still keeps. Jason is he, who, by his doughtiness and wit, deprived the Colchians of their ram. He passed the Isle of Lemos on his way, after its pitiless and daring women had given up to death their every male. With tokens of his love and flattering words he there deceived the maid Hypsipyle, who previously had all the rest deceived. He left her there with child, and all alone. Him to this punishment that fault condemns. And for Medea too is vengeance wrought. With him go those that in this way deceive. Be this enough to know of this first ditch, and of those two that in its fangs it holds.
Already were we where the narrow path forms with the second bank across, and makes therewith abutments for another arch. We thence heard people in the following trench who whined and groaned, and with their muzzles puffed, while smiting their own bodies with their palms. The banks were crusted over with a mould by vapour from below, which sticking there, offensive to both eyes and nose became. So deep the bottom that there is no means of looking into it, unless one climb the arch's summit, where the crag is highest. Thither we came, and from it in the ditch people I saw immersed in excrement, which seemed from human privies to have come. While peering with mine eyes down there, I saw a head so foul with filth, that whether clerk's or layman's head it were, was not apparent. Scolding, he said,
Why greedier art thou to look at me than at the other foul ones?
And I, because if I remember well, I've seen thee with dry hair ere now, for thou Alessio Interminei of Lucca art. That's why I eye thee more than all the rest. And he then, as he beat upon his pate,
Those flatteries immersed me here below, wherewith my tongue was never surfeited.
Then, after this, my leader said to me,
See that thou urge thy glance a little further, that with thine eyes thou quite attain the face of that disgusting and dishevelled wench, who yonder claws herself with filthy nails, and crouches now, and now is on her feet. That Thais is, the prostitute, who answered her paramour when he had said, Have I great thanks from thee? Nay, marvellously great. Herewith, then, let our sight be satisfied.
End of Inferno, Canto 18. Section 19 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 19. The Eighth Circle, Fraud. The Third Trench, Simoniacs.
O Simon Magus, O his wretched followers, since ye the things of God, which ought to be the brides of righteousness, rapaciously adulterate for silver and for gold, it now behoves the trumpet sound for you, for in the third great trench your station is. We now had climbed the next tomb-spanning bridge, and were on that part of the crag which hangs directly o'er the middle of the trench. Wisdom supreme, how great the art thou showest in heaven, on earth, and in the evil world! How justly too thy virtue makes awards! I saw that on its sloping sides and bottom the livid-coloured stone was full of holes, all of one width, while each of them was round. Nor less nor more wide did they seem to me than those which in my beautiful St. John's are made as places for baptizing priests, and one of which not many years ago I broke to save one who was choking in it, be this a witness undeceiving all. Out of the mouth of each a sinner's feet protruded, and as far as to the calf his legs, the rest of him remained within. The souls of all were, both of them, on fire, because of which their joints so strongly twitched they would have snapped green twigs and cords of grass. And as a flame on oily things is wont to move along the outer surface only, so likewise was it there from heels to toes. Who, teacher, is he yonder who is tortured by twitching more than all the rest, his mates? said I, and whom a redder flame is sucking. And he to me,
If thou wouldst have me bear thee down yonder bank which lowest lies, from him thou'lt know both of himself and of his sins.
And I, what pleases thee I like. My lord thou art, and that I part not from thy will thou know'st, as also what is left unsaid. We then upon the fourth embankment came, and turning round, descended on our left into that narrow bottom pierced with holes. Nor yet did my good teacher set me down from off his back, but brought me to the hole of him who grieved so sorely with his shank. Whoe'er thou art, sad soul, that holdest down thine upper portion, planted like a stake, I then began, say something if thou canst. I there was like a friar that confesses a base assassin, who on being planted calls him again, that death may be delayed. And he cried out,
Dost thou stand there already? Dost thou stand there already, Boniface? By several years the writing lied to me. Art thou so quickly sated with the wealth for which thou didst not fear to seize by fraud, and outrage next the Lady Beautiful?
Even such did I become as those are who, not understanding what is answered them, deem themselves mocked, and think of no reply. Then Virgil said,
Tell him immediately, I'm not the one, I'm not the one thou thinkest.
And I replied to him as I was bidden. Whereat the spirit writhed with both his feet. Then sighing and with weeping voice, he said,
What is it, then, that thou dost ask of me? If to know who I am concern thee so, that for it thou hast crossed the bank, know then that I was with the mighty mantle clothed, and verily the she-bear's son was I, so eager to advance the cubs, that wealth I pocketed up there, and here myself. The others, who in working simony preceded me, are gathered 'neath my head, flattened between the fissures of the rock. I, in like manner, shall down yonder fall, when he arrives, whom I believed thou wast, when I of thee the sudden question asked. But now already longer is the time that I thus upside down have cooked my feet, than he will planted stay with ruddy souls. For after him shall come from westward lands a lawless shepherd of still uglier deed, and fit to cover him and me. Renewed shall Jason be, of whom in Maccabees one reads. And as to that one his king yielded, even so who governs France shall yield to this.
I know not whether I was here too bold, in that I answered him in this strain only. Now tell me, pray, how great the treasure was our Lord demanded of St. Peter first, before he placed the keys in his control. Surely he asked for naught but follow me. Nor yet did Peter or the rest take gold or silver from Matthias, when by lot he took the place the guilty soul had lost. Therefore keep still, for thou art rightly punished. And take good care of that ill-gotten wealth which caused thee to be valiant against Charles. And were it not for this, that I am still forbidden by reverence for the keys supreme thou hadst in keeping in the joyful life, words of still greater weight would I employ, because your greed, by trampling on the good and raising the depraved, afflicts the world. The evangelist was thinking of your shepherds, when she, who on the waters hath her seat, was seen by him to fornicate with kings. The one who with the 7 heads was born, and from the 10 horns her support received, while virtue still was pleasing to her spouse. Ye've made yourselves a god of gold and silver, and from idolaters how differ ye, save that they worship one, and ye 100? Ah, Constantine, of how much ill was mother, not thy conversion, but the dower gift the earliest wealthy father took from thee. While I was singing him such notes as these, he, whether it were wrath or conscience bit him, was fiercely kicking out with both his feet. I verily believe it pleased my leader, he heeded with so glad a look throughout the utterance of those true clear words of mine. He therefore took me up with both his arms, and when he had me wholly on his breast, he climbed again the path down which he came. Nor tired of holding me in his embrace, but bore me to the summit of the arch, which crosses from the 4th bank to the 5th. When there, he gently set his burden down, gently because that crag was rough and steep, and would be difficult for goats to cross. From thence another trench was shown to me.
End of Inferno, Canto 19. Section 20 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 20. The 8th Circle. Fraud. The 4th Trench. Diviners and Soothsayers.
About strange punishments must I make verses, and furnish matter for the 20th song of this first lay, which treats of those submerged. Already had I wholly given myself to looking down at its uncovered bottom, which with the tears of agony was bathed, when people in the great round trench I saw come weeping silently, and at the pace at which in this world litanies advance. Then, as my sight fell on them lower down, wondrously twisted each of them appeared between the chin and where the chest begins. For toward his loins his face was turned around, and backward it behoved him to advance, because of foresight they had been deprived. By palsy some, perhaps, may thus have been entirely turned around, but I have not seen it, nor do I think there ever was one such. So may God let thee, reader, gather fruit from this thy reading. Think now for thyself how I could ever keep my own face dry, when at close range I saw our human image so twisted that the weeping of the eyes along the fissure bathed the back. Indeed, as on a rock of that hard crag I leaned, I wept so that my escort said to me,
Art thou still foolish as the others are? Here liveth piety, when wholly dead is pity. Who then guiltier is than he who lets his feelings judge divine decrees? Lift thy head, and see the man for whom, before the Trojans' eyes, the earth was opened, whence all cried, Whither art thou rushing now, Amphiaraus? Why quittest thou the war? And he ceased not from plunging headlong down to Minos, who lays hold on every one. See how he makes a bosom of his shoulders; because he wished to see too far ahead, he looks behind, and backward goes his way. Behold Tiresias there, who changed his looks when female he became from being male, his members being each and all transformed; and afterward he needs must strike again the two entwining serpents with his rod, ere he the plumage of a male regained. He who to that one's belly turns his back is Aruns, who in Luni's mountain quarries, where toils the Carrese who dwells below, among white marbles had as dwelling place a cave, from which his view was not cut off when at the stars he gazed, or at the sea. And she who yonder with dishevelled locks covers the breasts which thou dost not behold, and has on that side all her hairy skin, was Manto, who first searched through many lands, then settled in the place where I was born. Thereof I'd have thee hear me speak a little. After her father had from life departed, and Bacchus' city had become enslaved, she wandered long about the world. Up there in lovely Italy, beneath the Alps, which o'er the Tyrol lock out Germany, there lies a lake which is Benaco called. From o'er 1,000 springs, I trow, 'tween Garda and Valcamonica, the Pennine Alp is bathed by waters which therein find rest. A midway place there is where Trento's shepherd, and he of Brescia, and the Veronese, might each his blessing give, if there he went. Peschiera next, a fair and mighty fortress, and fit to face both Bergamasques and Brescians, sits where the shore lies lowest round about. There all that in Benaco's spacious lap cannot be held, flows out of it perforce, and down through verdant pastures forms a stream. When once its water gathers head to run, no more Benaco, Mincio is its name, till at Governolo it joins the Po. Not long its course, before it finds low ground, o'er which it spreads, and, making it a marsh, is wont at times to be unsound in summer. Passing that way, the cruel virgin saw a region in the middle of the fen, untilled and naked of inhabitants. There, to escape all human fellowship, and work her arts, she settled with her slaves, and lived, and there she left her empty body. Thereafter men, who all around were scattered, collected in that place, which was a strong one, because it had a fen on every side. O' those dead bones of hers they built a town, then, after her, who first picked out the site, they called it Mantua, with no other lot. The people in it were more numerous once, before the foolishness of Casalodi had been deceived by Pinamonte's guile. I charge thee then, if e'er thou hear it said, my town had its beginning otherwise, permit no falsehood to defraud the truth.
Thy statements, teacher, are so sure to me, said I, and take such hold upon my faith, that those of others would be burnt out coals. But tell me if among these passing people thou seest any one deserving note, for my mind now is wholly bent on that. He told me then,
the one who from his cheeks extends his beard across his swarthy shoulders, an augur was, when Greece lacked males so much that for her cradles only few were left. 'Twas he who set, with Calchas' aid, at Aulis the time to cut the fleet's first rope. His name Eurypylus, and in a certain place he thus is called by my high tragedy. This thou knowest well, who knowest all of it. That other one, so thin about his flanks, was Michael Scott, who surely understood the artful game of magical deceits. Guido Bonatti see, and see Asdente, who wishes now that he had given heed to cord and leather, but too late repents. See the sad women who abandoned needles, spindles, and shuttles to become diviners. These wrought their spells with herbs and images. But now, come on, for Cain is with his thorns holding the bounds of both the hemispheres, and plays upon the waves below Seville, and round already was the moon last night. Thou surely must recall it, since at times it harmed thee not, when in the dark wood's depths.
Thus he to me, as meanwhile on we went.
End of Inferno, Canto 20. Section 21 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 21. The Eighth Circle, Fraud. The Fifth Trench, Corrupt Politicians.
Speaking of other things my comedy cares not to sing, we thus from bridge to bridge moved on, and when upon the summit, stopped, in order to behold the next ravine of Malebolge, and the next vain cries. And I beheld it wonderfully dark, and just such sticky pitch as that which boils in the Venetians' arsenal in winter, for caulking up again the unsound ships which cannot then be sailed, instead of which, as one a new one builds, one plugs the ribs of that which many voyages has made, one hammers at the stern, and at the prow another, one fashions oars, another cordage twists, while still another mends a jib or mainsail. Such was the coarse, dense pitch, which, not by fire, but by an art divine, boiled there below, and limed the bank on every side. I saw the pitch, but nothing in it save the bubbles the boiling raised, and that the whole of it kept swelling up, and settling back compressed. While I was gazing fixedly down yonder, my leader cried to me,
Beware, beware,
and drew me to himself from where I was. I then turned round as one who longs to see the thing which it behooves him to escape, and who, when by a sudden fear unmanned, although he sees, delays not his departure. And I perceived behind us a black devil come running up along the rocky crag. Ah, how ferocious in his looks he was, and in his actions how severe he seemed, with wings outspread and light upon his feet. His shoulder, which was sharp and high, was loaded with both a sinner's haunches, whom he held clutched tightly by the sinews of his feet.
Oh, Malebranche!
From our bridge he cried,
Here's one of Santa Zita's ancients. Put him beneath, for I'm for more of them returning to that town which I have well stocked therewith. There, save Bonturo, everyone's a grafter. A no for money there becomes a yes.
He hurled him down, and o'er the rugged crag returned, and never was a mastiff loosed with so much hurry to pursue a thief. The other sank, and then rose doubled up. Those fiends, though, who were sheltered by the bridge, cried,
Here the holy face awaileth not.
One here swims otherwise than in the Serchio.
If therefore thou dost not desire our hooks, protrude not from the surface of the pitch.
They pricked him then with o'er 100 prongs, and said,
Here under cover must thou dance, that, if thou canst, thou mayest thieve secretly.
Not otherwise do cooks have scullions plunge the meat with hooks into the cauldron's midst, to hinder it from floating on its surface. Thereat my kindly teacher said to me,
That here thy presence be not known, crouch down behind a rock, which may avail to screen thee. And be not thou afraid for any harm that may be done to me, who know these things, for I in phrase like this have been before.
He then passed on beyond the bridge's head, and when the 6th embankment had been reached, he had to show assurance in his face. With just the storm and fury wherewith dogs break out and rush upon a poor old man, who stops and begs at once from where he is. From 'neath the little bridge those devils issued, and turned against him all their grappling hooks. But he cried out,
Be none of you malicious. Before your grappling hooks take hold of me, let one of you advance and hear me speak. Then take ye counsel as to grappling me.
Then all cried out,
Let Malebolge go.
Thereat one started, while the rest kept still, and as he came said,
What does this avail him?
Dost thou think, Malacoda,
said my teacher,
that as thou seest I have hither come, safe until now from all your hindrances, unheld by will divine and favouring fate? Let us go on, for it is willed in heaven that I should show another this wild road.
Thereat his pride received so great a fall, that at his feet he dropped his grappling hook, and to the rest said,
Let him not be wounded.
My leader thereupon cried out to me,
Thou that among the bridge's broken rocks art crouching, safely now regain my sight.
I therefore moved, and quickly came to him. Then all the fiends advanced so far, I feared they would not keep their word. Even thus I once saw infantry, who under pledge of safety were from Caprona coming forth, afraid, when 'mong so many foes they saw themselves. Then wholly to my leader's side I drew, nor from their faces, which did not look good, did I remove my eyes. For as their prongs they lowered, one fiend to another said,
Wouldst thou that I should touch him on his rump?
And they replied,
Yes, see thou nick it for him.
But that fiend who was with my leader talking turned round at once and said to him,
Keep still there, Scarmiglione.
Then to us,
Further advance along this present crag cannot be made, because the 6th arch yonder lies wholly shattered on the ground below. But if it please you still to go ahead, go on along this ridge. There is nearby another crag which furnishes a path. Than this hour, 5 hours later yesterday, 1260 years had passed since here the path was broken. I am sending some of my company in that direction, to see if any yonder air themselves. Go on with them, for they will not be bad. Step forward, Alecchino and Calcabrina.
He then began to say,
Thou too, Cagnazzo, and that old Barbariccia guide the 10. Have Libicoco go, and Dragignazzo, tusked Ciriato too, and Graffiacane, with Farfarello and crazy Rubicante. Search round about the boiling birdlime pitch. Let these be safe as far as that next crag, which all unbroken goes across the den.
O teacher, what is this I see? Said I. If thou know how, pray let us go alone, for I request no escort for myself. If thou as wary art as thou art wont, dost thou not notice how they gnash their teeth, and with their eyebrows threaten us with woe? And he to me,
I would not have thee frightened. Let them grin on, then, as they like, for that they're doing at the wretches who are boiled.
They wheeled and moved along the left bank then, but not till each, as signal toward their leader, had first thrust out his tongue between his teeth, and he had of his rump a trumpet made.
End of Inferno, Canto 21. Section 22 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 22. The 8th circle, fraud. The 5th trench, corrupt politicians.
Ere now have I seen cavalry break camp, start to attack, or be reviewed, and even at times retreat in order to escape. Scouts have I also seen upon your lands, O Aretines. Raids too have I beheld, and tournaments and tilting matches fought. With trumpets now, and now with bells, with drums and beacon signals made from fortresses. With native and with foreign things, but never have I seen horse or infantry or ship, by sign of either land or sky, set out with instrument of wind as odd as that. With the 10 demons we were going on, the fierce company, but in a church with saints consort, with gluttons at an inn. Upon the pitch alone was I intent, that I might see all details of the trench and of the people who were burned therein. As dolphins do when arching up their backs they give the warning which bids mariners take measures for the safety of their ship. Even so at times, his suffering to relieve, one of the sinners there displayed his back, and hid it in less time than lightning takes. And as in ditches at the water's edge frogs stay with nothing but their muzzles out, and thus conceal their feet and all the rest, even so on all sides did those sinners stay. And now that Barbaricia was approaching, they likewise 'neath the boiling pitch withdrew. I saw, and still it stirs my heart with horror, one waiting thus, as oft, while one frog stays, it happens that another scurries off. And Graffiacane, who was nearest to him, hooking his pitch-smeared tresses, pulled him up, so that an otter he appeared to me. I knew by now the names of each and all, I noted them so well when they were chosen, and when they called each other, noticed how.
O Rubicante, see thou set thy claws upon him so, that thou peel off his skin.
The accursed all cried out together then, and I, my teacher, if thou canst, contrive to learn who that wretch is, who thus has fallen into his adversary's hands. My leader thereupon drew near to him, and asked him whence he was, and he replied,
Of Navarre's kingdom I a native was. My mother placed me out to serve a lord, for she had borne me to a rascal knave, who both himself and what he owned destroyed. I next in good King Thibault's household served, and there I set myself to graft, for which I pay the reckoning in this heat.
Here Ciriato, from whose mouth protruded as from a boar's a tusk on either side, caused him to feel how one of them could rip. Among bad cats the mouse had fallen now, for Barbaricia clasped him in his arms and said,
Stand off, while I am clutching him.
Then toward my teacher having turned his face, he said,
Ask him again, if more thou wish to know of him, before the others rend him.
My leader then,
Now tell me, know'st thou any, among the other sinners 'neath the pitch, who Latin is?
And he,
Not long ago I left a man from that vicinity. Would that like him I still were covered up, for I should then fear neither claw nor hook.
Here Libicoco said,
We've borne too much.
And with his hook so seized him by the arm and tore it that he carried off a piece. And Dragignazzo also wished to clutch him down at his legs, but their decurion then turned right around at them with threatening looks. When they were somewhat pacified again, of him who was still looking at his wound my leader asked without delay,
Who then was he, from whom thou tookst unlucky leave, as thou hast said, to land upon the shore?
And he made answer,
That was Fra Gomita, Galura's man, vessel of all fraud, who, when he held in hand his master's foes, so dealt with them that each is glad. Their money he took, and, as he puts it, let them all off easy, and even in other offices was not a petty, but a first-rate grafter. With him Don Michel Zanche of Logodoro associates. And never do their tongues feel tired out by talking of Sardinia. But oh, look at the other grinning there. More would I say, but am afraid lest that one be making ready to claw my skin.
Then the great provost turned toward Farfarello, who rolled his eyes as if he meant to strike, and said,
Off yonder, thou malicious bird.
If you desire.
Thereat began again the terror-stricken man.
to see or hear Tuscans or Lombards, I will have them come. But let the evil claws here stand aside a little, that their vengeance be not feared. And I, while sitting in this very place, for one that I am, shall make 7 come out, when I shall whistle, as our wont it is, when any one of us protrudes himself.
Cagnazzo at this speech his muzzle raised, and shook his head, and said,
Hear the sly trick devised by him to cast himself below.
Then he, who frauds in great abundance had, replied to him,
Tricky indeed am I, when for my mates a greater pain I win.
Here Ali Keen could not control himself, but said in opposition to the rest,
I shall not gallop after thee, in case thou dive, but o'er the pitch shall beat my wings. The ridge abandoned, be the bank a screen, to see if thou alone art more than we.
Now, reader, of a new sport shalt thou hear. Each turned his eyes the other way, and he the first who had thereto been most opposed. The Navarrese chose well his time, stood firmly upon the ground, and jumping suddenly, from what they purposed, freed himself thereby. For this each felt himself to blame, but most the one who of the loss had been the cause. Hence he moved first, and shouted,
Thou art caught!
But little did it profit him, for wings could not outmeasure fear. As one went under, the other flying upward raised his breast. Nor different is the speed with which a duck dives under water when a hawk draws near, who, vexed and baffled thus, flies up again. Then Calcabrina, angered by the flout, flew out behind him, glad that one escaped, because it let him scuffle with the other. And then, the grafter having disappeared, he turned his claws upon his own companion, and grappled with him o'er the ditch. But he, being indeed a fighting sparrow-hawk fitted to claw him well, they both fell down into the middle of the boiling fen. A sudden separator was the heat, but rising thence was quite impossible, they had their wings so limed with sticky pitch. Then Barbariccia, vexed as were the rest, his mates had 4 of them with all their hooks fly to the other bank. On both sides then they speedily descended to their posts, and stretched their hooks out toward the pitch belimed, who now were cooked inside their crusted hides, and thus embarrassed we abandoned them.
End of Inferno, Canto 22.